Hello, I'm Alan Wallace with Cola Daily, and we're here with John Sherrer. John's with Historic Columbia, and he's also one of this year's Experience Columbia, South Carolina ambassadors. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you so very much for allowing me to be here.
Yeah. So how did you get to be an Experience Columbia, South Carolina ambassador?
Well, that's a good question. I think perhaps because enough people thought that because of my history with the city of Columbia, my hometown, and the work that I've done through Historic Columbia since 1996, that I might know one or two things about what makes the capital city tick.
Absolutely, that makes sense. And you just mentioned you've been with Historic Columbia now for more than 2 decades.
Yes, I have.
And I know that you recently changed title with them. You were, well, I'm going to blow the titles, but
That's
you recently
quite all right.
changed roles.
My current position's title is Director of Preservation, and Historic Preservation is one of the central tenets of what we do at Historic Columbia. And it was something that I did earlier as part of my Director of Cultural Resources position, but we've had a slight realignment, and I'm able to devote all of my time to historic preservation now, so it's really awesome.
Yeah, that's exciting. So, and we'll come back to Historic Columbia in a minute, but you mentioned Columbia's your hometown.
It is.
You've been here, Cardinal Newman student with high school?
I'm a 1987 graduate of Cardinal Newman, where it used to be on Forest Drive.
Oh, that's excellent, yeah. And you have degrees from both Clemson and South Carolina, which not too many people could say, I imagine.
I do. I kind of covered both of my bases.
That's great.
I have a master's in English from Clemson and a master's in public history from the University of South Carolina.
That's wonderful. And so what got you into the history side of the world? What got you interested in that?
Well, I was finishing up my master's in English at Clemson and ended up landing an internship with the Smithsonian in the National Air and Space Museum. And rather than going and teaching English afterwards, I decided to get into the museum field and work in historic preservation as well.
That's excellent. And so for those who don't know, obviously the title to a degree explains what Historic Columbia is, but tell us what Historic Columbia does.
Sure. Well, Historic Columbia was founded in 1961 for really the express purpose of saving what today we call the Robert Mills House. It's one of Columbia's 5 National Historic Landmarks. But the organization grew to include the preservation of other historic sites. We have 6 properties under our care today. We're your resource for local history, local preservation advocacy, education.
That's great. And so, as you said, that does make you kind of a logical choice to be an ambassador.
I'm always learning new stuff about where I live, and I think that's what makes it so interesting and fulfilling for me. In my hometown.
Yeah, there are little tidbits. I was just walking down Gervais Street the other day, and I've lived here I'm not a native like you are, but lived here more than 10 years, and noticed there's a stone plaque commemorating when Marquis de Lafayette visited after the Civil War. And I don't know how many times I had walked down that street and not seen it. Like, hey, Lafayette was here.
Lafayette was here in the 1820s. Unfortunately, the Lafayette House was demolished during the kind of development of Gervais Street during the later 19th, early 20th centuries. But,
right, that makes sense. But that's part of what y'all do is keep things like you mentioned the Robert Mills House from being demolished.
Exactly, and we tell the complex stories of Columbia's past and Richland County's past to the other sites under our care, at the Hampton Preston site and gardens, the Majeska Simpkins site, the Man Simon site, and then the Museum of Reconstruction at the Woodrow Wilson Family Home.
That's awesome. And I know that y'all do, it's of course about history, but I know that with the Robert Mills House in particular, there are so many events take place on the grounds at Robert Mills House, and in that area, Hampton Preston too. So it's history, but y'all are part of today in Columbia.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Well, I think that a lot of people don't realize that we have 14 acres of curated gardens and grounds under our care, and these make ideal venues for programs, events, special events, weddings, you name it.
Absolutely, here at Cola Day, we cover a lot of those events.
That's right, you sure do. Thank you.
Been to so many events, so many different kinds of events. Those 2 venues in particular, but the other sites as well. as an ambassador, I know that Joel's job as ambassadors is to promote the city more than anything else.
Sure.
So what do you tell people about Columbia? People who haven't been here before, whether they're visitors or just moving here, what makes this a good place to live?
I think for me, it is that Columbia is a very livable city. It is easily negotiated. You can get from point A to point B without too much fuss. The people are friendly. We have a wide variety of things to do, whether it's sporting related or food and bev, or simply just going out and enjoying the natural resources that are here, literally within walking distance from the State House.
Yeah,
it's a city that has, I think, so much to offer, and people come here maybe for work, maybe for going to the university or whatnot. Maybe to retire, and it is interesting to see when people come to me and say, I found out this, I discovered this about Columbia, and sometimes I know it, sometimes I don't, but when I don't, it makes it even more rewarding because people see things, they find value in what the city offers. Yeah.
I don't mean to put you on the spot. Is there something that you learned recently that you didn't know? Something pops into your head that came to you like in the last little bit, even though you've lived here all your life?
Well, yeah, actually, in some of the work that Historic Columbia does, we work with communities, various neighborhoods and whatnot, to discover more about their history. And I was fascinated to learn in 1928 about the various sites that were potentially going to be the location of the municipal baseball field.
Oh, interesting.
And of course, we know the one that's on Assembly Street today, but there were two other locations that people considered at that time, one of which was right off of North Main Street, and the other of which was very close to Maxie Gregg Park.
Interesting.
So just kind of having the opportunity to see how various stories played out ultimately.
Sure.
Like we know where things are now, but the story behind how they got there is
and what might have been.
Exactly.
What might have changed if they'd put it in one of those other places. That's so interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah. As the ambassadors, I know y'all are newly selected, but I know y'all have had a chance to spend a little bit of time together, and as always, Experience Columbia has picked a interesting group. Y'all are from different backgrounds, different walks of life, different ages. It's a very diverse group of people.
It is, and I think that's exciting for me because I bring obviously to the table certain perspectives and certain experiences, but meeting people who have not necessarily grown up here, but who've come here and chosen to stay, that invigorates me.
Absolutely.
And I love to be able to talk with folks about where they're from originally or where they've traveled.
Oh, sure.
And just kind of compare notes and say, oh, that city over there is pretty good, or that state's pretty neat over there, but look what we have here, and wow.
Yes, that makes sense. That makes sense. And as you mentioned, you've chosen to stay here. Your fellow ambassadors have chosen to stay here. And back to history in Columbia, that's got to be one of the attractions too, right? A lot of stuff. I feel like when you talk about a city in the South in general, Civil War is one of the first things that pops into people's heads. And of course, that's one of the things, but a lot of other stuff happened in this part of the world too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Columbia, of course, was shaped by political forces from the get-go. Sure. We are the first planned city in the United States.
Interesting. See, I didn't know that.
Take me to task. Some people will say, well, isn't Savannah older or isn't Philadelphia? I said, they were founded before we were the United States.
Interesting.
We were founded in 1786, March 22nd. And that's 3 years prior to Washington, D.C. So we have, a very interesting and predictable downtown. For folks who are from the Midwest or whatnot, the grid pattern downtown is very comforting. It's something like home.
Yeah.
But when you look at Columbia's the design of it and its development, shaped by a variety of forces, much like most cities, but in our case, a few of them are unique, and certainly, the land on which we stand, right here in the middle of the state, the geographic center, right here in the fall line, where the rivers cease to be navigable from the coast. We have, of course, the University of South Carolina and Allen University and Benedict College and other schools that have formed that history of of education here. We look, of course, to CIU, and you think of all of the different reasons people came here. A lot of people came here for Camp Jackson, later Fort Jackson, a huge economic engine, and a cultural influence here in the Midlands. And of course, we're a great place to enjoy sports, and there's a lot of sports to be had here. I hear the Lady Gamecocks are doing really well again.
18,000 in Columbia.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a pretty good day.
That's a pretty good day. Yeah, I'm really excited about that.
That's great. So you've got a year ahead as an experienced Columbia, South Carolina ambassador. What are you looking forward to most in this role?
Wow, that's a great question. I think I want to do a lot of listening. I want to listen to my fellow ambassadors. I want to listen to what other people are saying about our city, and just kind of chime in and add kind of my 2 cents where it helps amplify the capital city in ways that others may not necessarily realize they can. I'm excited to learn more. I see this as an opportunity for me to learn, as well as to just talk about stuff I know.
Thanks so much, John. We appreciate your time today. John Sherrer from Historic Columbia. He's their Director of Preservation, and he's also an experienced Columbia, South Carolina ambassador for this year. A new role for him, but a natural fit. You can learn more about the Experienced Columbia, South Carolina Ambassador Program and meet the other ambassadors at coladaily.com. I'm Alan Wallace.